Before we begin with our guest, Dr. J.M. Cox, I'd like to play for you, like this is what we're going to talk about. We're talking about Philadelphia. But yesterday, the mayor of Philadelphia, and right out of the playbook of political correctness, of John Kerry, of Barack Obama, and of course, George W. Bush, who said, it's not about Islam. We've seen this video now of Edward Archer walking over towards Officer Jesse Harnett and shooting him. Admitted it was Islam that caused him to do it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is his honor.
In no way, shape, or form does anyone in this room believe that Islam or the teaching of Islam has anything to do with what you've seen on that screen. This is a criminal with a stolen gun who tried to kill one of our officers. Has nothing to do with being a Muslim or following the Islamic faith.
There are too many guns.
There's the chief of police, which is he's a political appointment, so he's just going to follow the PC party line. This is the chief in Philly.
Shape or form does anyone in this room believe that Islam or the teaching of Islam has anything to do with what you've seen on that screen. This is a criminal with a stolen gun who tried to kill one of our officers. Has nothing to do with being a Muslim or following the Islamic faith.
Right. There are too many guns, too many guns on our streets, and I think our national government needs to do something about that.
It's guns. All right, please say good morning. This is his first visit, and I know it won't be his last. Dr. G.M. Cox is our guest. Dr. Cox, good morning. Welcome to Denver and welcome to Colorado Springs, and good morning.
Good morning, Peter, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, a little bit of your background so people get a sense of you, and then let's talk about his honor.
Oh, okay. I was a police officer for 44 years, and 34 of those was the chief of police in 4 different cities in Texas. Graduated from the University of Texas at Arlington with a PhD in 2011, and now I'm an assistant professor at Tarleton State University in Stephenville, but I teach. I'm the director of the public administration program at Tarleton State, which is taught at the Fort Worth campus.
What do you make of the mayor of Philadelphia in that cut, if you haven't heard it yet?
I just heard it, and I understand. I tell you that what's going on is there's what I call a very fine line narrative being taught, and it's been this narrative for a couple of years, and that is that people try to connect, or at least disconnect, activities of what one might consider Islamic or Muslim activity or faith and action. And when one person, such as this suspect, takes on the name of Allah in an action, there's this, some of us who would like to believe that that's obviously all Muslims are like that. Well, clearly that's not the truth, but one would be very hard to find that in this case, Allah, Islam, and this guy's faith isn't connected. And I think that's where people have a problem listening to these politicians, is that they're trying to disconnect the obvious.
Yeah.
And you and I don't do that.
I mean, it's amazing. And now this woman has come forward, and I'm sure you've seen the story as well. And she said, wait a minute. She said, this guy had a couple of, quote, colleagues, and they're going to hunt cops. And they're going to do so in the name of Islam. Now, I don't live in Philadelphia. Philadelphia's a tough place. Imagine the reaction of the rank and file man or woman in Philadelphia when you hear. But of course, this is John Kerry. Remember that this is not about Islam, but whether it's ISIS or ISIL, what does that first I stand for? Islam.
Islam.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And George Bush, the religion of peace. I mean, if you can't define an enemy, says Sun Tzu, stay the hell out of it. But
I agree. That's one of the problems we have with this narrative is that the radical Islam, these people have been around for years. The Muslim Brotherhood in America. There's been, for instance, the Holy Land Foundation out of Richardson, Texas. They named a number of very prominent Islamic associations as unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation.
Of course.
So people need to keep that in mind when they start discussing it. I think there's the moderate or the mainstream Muslim who has no thoughts of doing what these people, but isn't that what Mrs. Merkel told the Germans? And look at that insanity now with these people, women being gang raped, and we're supposed to. Well, how are we supposed to draw a line here? Because DACA can't do it. I understand, and it's very difficult to do. One has to overcome the natural inclination to circle the wagons and defend the homeland. I understand that. But at the same time, the United States, America, is founded by immigrants. So for us to be a little bit eccentric about who we allow in, it doesn't pass the genuineness test. But
yeah, but also Jimmy
it's a different
Carter's
world.
done it. It's happened in the past. It's done for right reasons. Jimmy Carter did it to Iranians. Everybody wants to drive by that, but it really does. It happened many times, and right now, I'm really in favor of what Trump is saying. Let's put a halt to it. Locally, we have a idiot daily newspaper, the Denver Post, and we have been kind of upside down now with this illegal driver's license fiasco. You should see. I got to find your editorial. I just love editorials in the Denver Post, but this is the headline: Failure by design on Colorado immigrant driver's licenses. Here again, they're not immigrants. Immigrants are people who came here legally. And the illegal immigrant is not an immigrant. That doesn't stop the Denver Post. And they editorialize driver's license program for illegal immigrants should be fixed. Immigrants, they're not immigrants. They're illegal immigrants. So
there's a very difference.
Absolutely. So, again, bring it back to what we're watching in Philly and what we're watching across the United States and what we're watching in Europe. Doctor, what should the policies be?
Good question. Well, I think you cannot create a policy unless you can openly discuss it without fear and without what you call political correctness.
Sure, of course.
The Islamic State, the ISIL and others, Al Qaeda and Taliban, they're exercising the playbook. That playbook was written years ago. You can look at it online. And it basically talks about information dominance. And what that means is information dominance means we can talk about you and anything we want, but you can't talk about it because we're going to invoke Allah, because it becomes a heretical statement and so on. So first you have to be able to clearly, fairly, and without prejudice discuss the topic, or you cannot create a policy. So you cannot discuss the topic unless you can talk about the topic, which in this case is Islamic radicalism.
I take it you're an old guy like me. I've seen your picture.
I'm pretty old.
Yeah, me too. But, the word Islamophobia did not exist until after 9/11, and then the left invents a way to control the conversation. So anybody that, this show has been called a hate show. It's been called all kinds of things ask me if I care, but the point of it is, that's the only response you have to a show or to a person like yourself is that he's a hater. And then that scares all the libs, and that scares the progressives, it scares the big media, it scares Major League Sports, it scares everybody.
Exactly what I was talking about when I said information dominance. They create words that in and of themselves control the dialogue. For instance, in Islamophobia, it may not have existed. It certainly does now, but it's thrown at those who want to discuss this policy issue. So now you have your hands behind your back. We know, for instance, that the majority, a large number of the bombers, the people that were involved in 9/11, came out of a radicalized mosque in Virginia.
Absolutely.
So we've been able to trace these things. People want to look, and they should read more about the 9/11 in the commission report.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. Somebody has said many times the Boston Marathon bombers. The older brother dies, the younger brother survives. So the defense for the younger brother is, his older brother radicalized him. And it ended.
Absolutely.
The question I asked was, who radicalized the older brother? The answer is the Boston Mosque. But you see what big media did. They blamed it on the older brother, as though the older brother, out of a vacuum, becomes a radicalized Muslim. He doesn't. He was radicalized in that mosque.
First off, you can't be radicalized unless you're open to radicalization.
Of course, but you got to go find a well to drink out of.
Absolutely, you got to hear the message. This goes back years. I mean, we've seen mind control, love bombing during the age of the love movement and the cults. So we've seen this kind of mind control, but you've got to be in a position first to be open.
I agree. And
yes.
So now what do we do? What do you do with Trump?
Yeah, I'm not a political pundit. I would have to tell you that, in my personal opinion, this does not represent anybody else.
I understand.
And particularly Tarleton State. I don't think Donald Trump is a Main Street politician. I think everybody likes that about him. I think what I like about Donald is he's touched on topics that nobody else has the courage to do that.
That's right.
For instance, stopping the immigration, or allowing the immigration of refugees from Syria. And what the media, as you pointed out, said he's wanting to ban. That's not what he said. He said, let's stop it until we can figure out a way to fully vet them before we let them in this country. I mean, we have rules. For instance, I never would have thought that the immigration INS could not look at a Syrian or any other refugees' social media pages. But we've laid those rules out there that says we can't do that. Those obviously needs to change.
By the way, I have this new idea that I thought especially somebody who's in the field that you're in, as smart as you are. You know, Denver started on Friday with body cameras. Rank and file cops have body cameras. So here's my new thought. I think the mayor needs to have a body camera. I think the governor needs to have a body camera. I'm serious as a heart attack. I think the city council, and I think we should be able to see everywhere they go, all the deals they make, who they talk to. Because if you're going to take a rank and file cop and you're going to watch him or her, I think we should be able to see the governor all the time. I think because both the governor and the mayor are progressive Democrats and champions of body cameras. I have nothing against body cameras, but how about if the governor has to wear one?
Right.
How about if the mayor has to wear one?
Oh, you definitely would flip the coin on some of the politicians.
Well, yeah.
The world as we know it, politics as we know it, would change if everything they said and who they talked to was a public record.
How about put one on Obama? I take a week of it. No, and I'm not making this up because they all want body cameras on these men and women who risk their lives every day. Okay, fine. You put one on, dude.
Don't disagree with you for as a discussion item, but the reality of the situation, police officers are some of the most powerful street-level bureaucrats in the world. They have the ability to use force, to invoke the government, the state's authority.
I agree.
So I think that what's happening here, and by the way, my experience is most police officers are very supportive of
That's
body
right.
cam.
Yeah. No, I'm not arguing it.
And what I find difficult is body cams are only a snapshot of time. It doesn't show you what happened on the left of that incident or the right of that incident or below and above. So there's been some images captured on body cams that if that were the only image, it made the officer look very, very bad.
Well, no, of course, but
there's more multiple angles. But I would say 98, 99% of the time, those body cams and the video it produces will protect officers, and I think officers know that.
No, I'm not against body cameras. What I'm saying is,
I agree.
I think that the mayor, who was a champion, the governor, the manager of safety, the chief of police, all of these people who I believe are, a nickel off of the corrupt bag, I'd like to see I'd like to see the governor wear a body camera.
Well, it'd be interesting, that's for sure. I think politics would become a lot more civil.
You bet.
Would be my first.
Well, see who gets the nod.
I don't know that we'd get much done because sometimes these politicians have to say things.
And that's a good thing.
It wouldn't be popular.
If they can't do anything, that's all right. I'm going to bounce two more off you. Sean Penn going down and getting an interview with El Chapo. What do you do with that?
Well, number one, he's an American citizen in a foreign country. He didn't commit a crime in the United States. So by meeting with this Chapo, I would have to say that I think everybody knows that Sean Penn's moral compass is a little screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got obviously a very liberal guy who was tapped by Rolling Stone to go down and interview.
How did he get it? That's weird.
You have to, as particularly you in the radio business or anyone in the media business, has to realize the neutrality of the media. That they sometimes are going to go and do things that other people might not do and wouldn't do. And I think that's what role of Sean Penn. I am no fan of Sean Penn's by any stretch, but I would have to say that him acting as he did in Mexico may have even, in fact, helped capture El Chapo.
Well, I think he's
even though it was unintentional.
Yeah. No, these boys, they play real rough. And if Sean Penn, I love how they wrote it, landed an interview.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like me getting to talk to the governor, right? They landed an interview.
Exactly. Landed it. He was, that was set up by that Mexican actress, and I think he was duplicitous in a way in getting him captured. So I think before the Mexican authorities may in fact have an issue with Sean Penn and this actress. If they knew who he was and had communication, why didn't they turn him over to the media?
Well, one of the thoughts that I had is, he did that dead man walk, and he might be because these guys they get even.
Right. Yeah. If that's the case, if Mr. Chapo Guzman thinks that Sean Penn was in any way complicit in his capture, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a good thing.
And I said, this is the same guy that hung out with Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro and couldn't find a political prisoner. So,
right.
Hey, one more. You're great. We'll have you back again. There's a story. There's a story in Denver, and again,
yes,
this is happening. I'm sure it's happening in Texas. Headline: Denver inmate died from being restrained by deputies. Death ruled a homicide. Guy's name is Michael Marshall. He's got a lengthy arrest record. And so the autopsy came down Friday. He was being restrained by deputies during a psychotic episode, and they ruled his death a homicide. And so the local Channel 9, the Denver Post, they have all these pictures of all the family members outside the Justice Center cheering and hugging. And I don't know this, but I'm going to guess. If you went to the sign-in, the log, the visitor's log at Denver's jail, this guy's got a criminal record as long as like a New York phone book. I wonder how many times you'd find a grieving relative having visited Uncle Michael.
Well, that's a good point. It's unfortunate these officers have to deal with this guy. I have to tell you that these in-line of duty deaths, such as that, or what we call in custody deaths, they're always lightning rods for collections of people who think that officers use too much force. But I have to tell you, in these kinds of cases, I don't know, I haven't seen, but autopsies just tell you one side of the story. For in this case, they said it's a homicide. Well, homicide doesn't necessarily mean illegality.
It means death,
It
right.
could very much, homicide just means the killing of one human being by another human being. It could be accidental. In this case, it could be justified. The officers could be totally justified in that force that was necessary. And I think people need to focus that when these MEs and these coroner officers issue these rulings, that does not necessarily immediately mean illegality. It just means the method and modality of death.
Wouldn't it be interesting, though, and I don't know if I can do this or not, to get the Sheriff's Department visitor's logbook and see how many of the grieving family members actually ever went in to see Uncle Michael in his series of takedowns, you know?
Well, that's being done, in the case in Texas. We had that young lady who passed away after being arrested by a state trooper in the Hunt County Jail. So they're doing the very same thing. The media is playing that one side of the story, the rough cop, the disingenuous or the less than sincere care that this person got. But the other side of the story is that her family denied her bail.
Oh, yeah.
And so on and so forth. So you've got a good point. But I guess the focus I would go back to in the area that I guess I would say I'm an expert in is what's that activity inside that jail that ended up where this guy lost his life.
Denver's become a cash register for this stuff, and we have a district attorney who never seems to file against anybody. Now, the whole thing is interesting, but we have a smiling picture of Uncle Michael that was in the Denver Post and local TV, and all the grieving relatives. I said, just as an aside, I wonder if we got the visitor's log, Doc, I wonder how many of them were in there daily to see Uncle Michael, or how many bailed Uncle Michael, and then took him home with them. After they got Uncle Michael out, did they come and say, come live with us,
How
Uncle
many
Michael?
times?
Yeah.
I suspect that this was a psychotic break. It wasn't
Absolutely, sure.
But the other side of that, that record's a public record,
I know.
Quite frankly, so anybody can go get it.
Sure, it's going to be...
the question is, what's it going to have and what's it not going to have?
I got to guess.
Yes.
All right, sir. We'll have you back. You're great. You're as advertised. Dr. J.M. Cox, a law enforcement expert. Thanks for doing the show, man. Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you again real soon, Doc. Thanks for doing the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.